Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good morning, everybody. Go ahead and consider a motion to approve the agenda.
I so move.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you. We call the roll, please.
Commissioner Aaron's.
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon.
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Move on to our consent agenda and consider a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Sean?
Commissioner Aaron's.
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon.
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. We'll go ahead with our opportunity for public comment. If there's anyone in the audience who wants to come on up, please do so now. Morning, sir. Will you just state your name and address, please?
My name is Mick Baruth. I'm from 5405 South Coneflower Circle, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I want to thank you for your service to the public. I got a handout here. Just take my best out. So I'm here speaking on the election integrity, and I think there's been some misconceptions that in speaking to a local county auditor from another county, they were didn't understand where we're getting these numbers from. One of the things was the absentee ballots that came back the same day or the next day after they went out. And so in speaking with this county auditor, she said, I don't know how that can be possible. And so we asked her what the process was, and she said when an absentee ballot goes out, it is scanned through the machine, and then when it comes back in, it gets scanned through the machine. So she has figured out that maybe something's wrong with that, and she's actually going to be on paper keeping track of when these absentee ballots go out in her county and exactly when they come back so that she can compare that to what the machine says when it's uploaded to the Secretary of State. On the front of the piece of paper, we've given you some information about where we're coming up with this information. The very first part, on November 10th, 2020, the election from November 3rd, 2020 was certified by the Secretary of State. Their website showed the following statistics. And you'll notice there's a difference between April 22nd of 21, April 2nd of 2021, 9/22 of 2021, and 12/29 of 2021. The number of ballots that were cast in the state versus by county do not match up. They're ever evolving. Anybody in business that sees something like that going on has to question what's going on. In the middle of the page, we canvassed from the voter rolls any address with 5 or more registered voters. The door-to-door canvassing took place in Minnehaha, Lincoln, and Pennington counties on February 5th and March 15th of 2022. From those canvassing efforts, 361 houses were reached. 160 of those residents answered the door. From the February 5th canvassing, we found 96% voter discrepancy. From the March 15th canvassing, we found 92% discrepancy. Now, it'd be one thing if it was 4% or 8% discrepancy, but we're talking 96 and 92% discrepancy. There's something the matter with the voter rolls. 4 of the homes were vacant. That doesn't add up. So when my kids were growing up, if my wife and I asked them for their cell phone or about their grades, and they didn't want to share, we immediately knew something was up. We had 2 choices. We could let it go or pursue the truth. All good parents pursue the truth even though they may be fearful of what they may find. I work in the financial world. I'm an investment advisor. I want you to picture this. If you were one of my clients and you called me up and says, could you give me the balance of my account today? And I said, sorry, can't do that. Number one, how long would I be in business? Number two, how long would we be before I'm getting sued by those same clients? And then picture them calling the company their money's actually invested with, and their company giving them the same answer. Sorry, we can't give you the balance of your account. Now, as crazy as that sounds, let's go another step further. Let's say I and/or the company that I work for that invests those people's money actually decided we were going to call the clients and say, since you decided to sue us, we want you to pay for lawyers for us to fight your lawsuit. That's exactly what's going on in Lincoln County right now. You guys are using taxpayer dollars to hire outside law firms to keep the facts from the constituents, the taxpayers who work for you. And I would bet if the vast majority of the residents of Lincoln County knew that, there'd be a lot more people here. Those are our dollars. We're using our own personal dollars to try and find out the truth. We're digging in our own pockets, and then you guys dig in our pockets to fight us. That makes absolutely no sense. That's totally unfair to the constituents of your county. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come up? Good morning.
Good morning. Scott Montgomery, Fairview, South Dakota. I'm here to talk about the change to the public comment policy, and I guess I'd like to know why it's changing, what prompted it. I don't think it's being abused from what I've seen. We're a representative republic in this country, and we need to be heard. For some reason, there's this idea that we should be muzzled. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe we don't always agree on subjects, but you guys work for us, not the other way around. You guys are paid to sit here. We take time out of our day to come here and voice our opinions and the way we'd like to see things run. And I think that's what you guys are supposed to do, represent us. Not have your own opinions how this county ought to be operated. We're the ones paying the taxes. We're the ones you're supposed to represent. That's the way the government's supposed to work in this country. But it doesn't seem like that's what's happening right now. It seems like you're trying to muzzle us and sit down and shut up. We're going to do our business and leave us alone. On item number 2 of this, one thing I want to talk about is on this form here, it has a link to the present policy. That goes nowhere. You can't get to the present policy, so I can't see what the present public comment policy is versus what's you got in front of us today. So I'm not sure why you want to change it to 3 minutes. I don't think the 5 minutes has been abused. Has the 30 minutes ever been used up? Does it bother you guys to sit here for an extra 30 minutes when you're getting paid to represent us? So I'm not sure why we want to change it to 3 minutes. On item number 2, it says that unless it's a regular business, unless the executive session is specified on the agenda. Well, if it is, then what? Do we have to sit there and wait for the executive session to be done? I mean, I don't have time to come here and sit for hours. That's already happened once. We sat here for 4 hours, and then we were denied comment. And so is that going to happen next time? Is it going to happen today? I was informed before the meeting we may not get to comment on agenda item number 3 because it's already been talked about. So I guess I'm using my 5 minutes to talk about that. And item number 6, it talks about if there's more than 5 speakers on the same subject, they ought to get together and have someone appointed or a spokesperson. Well, that doesn't mean we're all from one group, just we have the same item and we want to talk about. So I'm not sure why that's even being put on there. It says on item number 12, that we can't talk about anticipated or pending litigation. How are we supposed to know what's anticipated? How are we supposed to know what's pending? I mean, is that published somewhere? It just seems to me like you're trying to muzzle us, and I don't think we need to be muzzled. And I guess I'd like to know, how do we know when we come here whether we're gonna get to speak on an item that's on the agenda? I figured we'd be able to speak on item number 3 today, but I was told possibly, possibly not. That's no way to run a business. I mean, if we're gonna have things on the agenda, can't we talk about them? If we can't talk about them while they're on the agenda, why do we have to wait till the end of the meeting to talk about them? It just seems to me it's a little out of touch with the people here that you're representing. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come up?
Good morning. My name is Mike Mathis, and I'm at 1500 East 63rd Street, Sioux Falls. Let me just say it makes me sick to be here today. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here in the public. I have other things to do in my life. And I know you don't care that I'm here. I know you guys don't care. I want our elected officials to follow the oath they took and let us all live our lives. Well, that is obviously not happening. You just said the Pledge of Allegiance. Does that mean anything to you guys? Does the Pledge of Allegiance mean anything? Does your oath mean anything? I'm here today again as I see the move you're making to silence us, the people you represent. I know this is a coordinated effort across South Dakota as it's happening elsewhere. You know where else they try to eliminate or restrict free speech? In communist countries. All of the new restrictions are that of a communist government. You can talk, but it can't be offensive or against our narrative. If against the narrative we want, we can cut you off. That really makes me feel great. So speak what we want or we will stop you. All of the folks that think we are crazy, because there's people that think we're crazy for wanting a transparent government. And we've been called out. I'm a terrorist. Telling us we are an open book, our auditor telling us we're an open book, when that is the furthest thing from the truth, is just a joke. So go on, call me a terrorist. We want transparent and honest elections. We don't want private businesses coming in, such as the pipeline, and taking ownership rights away. We are terrorists because we want honest elected officials that will honor their oath. Our state motto is under God, we the people rule, not under some maybe elected, because we don't know, officials that won't show us anything to validate if they're legit, we rule. Those that have nothing to hide, hide nothing. Not only will you not give us our information, now you want to silence us. You all coming up with the rules for public comments is not what freedom is. You are acting to muzzle the very people you are supposed to work for. People of South Dakota, I've never lived in a communist country, but being told South Dakota is heading down that path very quickly.
Come on up. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Linda Montgomery from Fairview, South Dakota. You've seen me before. You know what I'm going to say. I want the public records that were Freedom of Information Act we requested a long time ago. I have found out that you, Lincoln County residents, need to know that you've hired Caldwell, Sanford, and Delbert to represent you against us. And I agree with the rest of the speakers. This is not right. It is not freedom. These are public records. That is like me buying a car and you saying you can never look under the hood. You can't check the oil. You can't do this. You can't do that. It's buying a cash register and not being allowed to look in the drawer and count the money in the drawer. Please. The machines are a third party. Right? And they talk about, come, watch us test these machines. And I talked with computer programmers that said, like, yeah, of course they can test the machines. That was programmed for them to do. We want the CVRs. We want what was requested on the FOIAs. I truly don't think that's too much to ask in a free country. And it's hard that we can't fight with the money you guys can spend on your lawyers, but we will be here repeatedly until we can hear that, no, you guys are never, ever going to have a transparent, a free and fair election. Then I guess we already feel that, but then we'll know it for sure. Thank you.
Anybody else want to come up? All right, if not, any commissioner reports? Oh, okay, come on up.
Betty Otten, 467-872 73rd Street, NT. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak, and thank you for serving in your elected capacity. I would agree 100% with Chad's comments last week requesting that you leave the public comment at the beginning of the meeting. So I'm asking also that you reconsider moving the opportunity for public comment to the not going to the end of the meeting. Any 3-minute address would be very hard for anyone to do at the end of some very lengthy meetings, especially if they are employed and not retired, and when one or more commissioners have to leave early. I also agree with him 100% that giving the public the opportunity to give input on any non-public hearing agenda item is a great step forward on transparency. Another topic, as the courthouse expansion presentations are starting tonight, and were quite frankly a surprise to the citizen members of the Courthouse Improvement Committee on which I serve, as there was no meeting scheduled to have public input on the record. So I wish to do so this morning. For background, Lincoln County was given notice that Minnehaha County would no longer grant Lincoln County the use of their courtrooms after the next 6 months, and the sheriff was given notice that they would no longer house our prisoners in 5 years or less. The citizens of the Courthouse Improvement Committee submitted their unanimous agreement that the courtrooms and the future jail should be built on the west end of Canton. However, the proposal to go into purchase negotiations on the closed Great Western Bank was a huge surprise to us, as an independent review of the building was rejected by the architects and others involved in selecting a building site as being insufficient space. It was considered, and it was also noted by them that this original courthouse building cannot even be considered an historical site because of all the past revisions removed the historical aspects, which also surprised us. Also noted that this building would require extensive and expensive upkeep and maintenance. I also want to go on record that the current owner of that building does not want to sell, and the words from a commissioner were to use eminent domain. This is not how Lincoln County needs to move forward working with its residents, especially on a building deemed unfit for Lincoln County's use. I also want to go on record that a commissioner in a public meeting was asked about the west end of Canton property and was told he couldn't vote for it if the county had to pay $10 million to bring in sewer and water, that he would indeed vote to revamp this current building for courtrooms. When asked about a future jail because this current building and property would be landlocked for a future jail, his answer was, well, we still own the property in T. This is something many of us fought extremely hard against 2 years ago, and the bond for the T jail failed in every Lincoln County precinct. That fight was never about a jail, but the location. The needed future jail needs to be in the county seat, and that's here in Canton. I totally understand the property tax burden on our citizens, but per law, we must provide the courtrooms, and will eventually have to provide a jail as well. However, just thinking out of the box and stepping on a couple sacred cows, Lincoln County is under no legal obligation or law to own an airport or even provide 4-H land and facilities. And to my knowledge, the Lincoln County budget provides the highest daily prisoner rate in South Dakota of $110 a day, which could be used to build our own jail. And then there's the T property, which should be sold. All to take that completely off the table. All of these options would reduce the burden on property owners to pay for the new Justice Center. I urge you not to be short-sighted by landlocking us into this current site but to provide any future needs by looking to the West Canton property for the courtrooms, offices, and future jail site. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else want to come up? All right, if not, any commissioner reports?
Yeah, Madam Chair, on Monday, November 21st at 5:30, Monday, November 21st at 5:30 in the Canton Performing Arts Center, the Navigator Greenway, they're that company who wants to put in a second CO2 pipeline. They're going to be holding a public meeting. So for the folks in the public who are interested in hearing from them and also providing some input, Monday, November 21st at 5:30 at the Canton Performing Arts Center will be the public's opportunity to speak to these people. And the county did receive a notice here. In fact, I'm looking at it because they're looking at going through some county land as well. So, hope everybody who wants an opportunity to speak on that issue can make it there November 21st at 5:30. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other
Madam Chair?
commissioners? Yep. Go ahead.
I wish to report that I had a conversation with the public service, with Mark Cotter of Sioux Falls, and that the environmental impact statement for the 85th Street interchange has been passed and has been approved by all the necessary authorities, and that there will be a public meeting to go forward on this in November, and that date has not been set yet, but it would be prior to Thanksgiving. So this is the last of the issues to deal with it, and after the public meeting, we would probably look at finalizing the design and then moving forward with the actual beginning of construction. So this is a great news, as this is the final step prior to the actual construction. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else have a report they'd like to make?
I'd like to report, Madam Chair, that last week I did attend a meeting at the Canton Depot with representatives from Canton and Worthing, and also our economic development team headed by Jesse and Von Court. And of course, we talked about the Lincoln County wastewater regional study that was, I guess, pretty much done by ISG. And this report is something now that I know that Jesse would like to come to a future Lincoln County Commission meeting and discuss a little bit as far as some of the facts in regard to it. So that should be coming down within the near future, where more of this information will be shared in regard to possibly this happening. So we'll see.
All right, thank you for that. Just also to touch on Commissioner Aaron's comments, there are additional meetings. Obviously, the closest one is in Canton on November 21st regarding the Navigator application for a pipeline. There'll also be public input, it looks like, on Tuesday, November 22nd in Flandreau at 11:30 in the morning at the Janklow Community Center, and then also on the 22nd at the Ramcota in Pierre. That one's in the evening at 5:30 p.m. And it looks there'll be other formal meetings after that, but those are opportunities. It looks like they're going to take some public input on that particular pipeline application. Any other commissioner reports? All right, then we'll move on to our regular business. Southeastern Behavioral here. Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, I am Chris Graham, CEO of Southeastern Behavioral, and thank you for having us today. Also, a big thank you for your continued support of Southeastern as we provide mental health and DD services for 4 counties, and you're one of the counties that we do serve. Every year, you give us a rate of about $44,000 a year. I'm happy to report that last year we provided over $95,000 worth of services. So we are seeing an increase of mental health services in the county. You know, during COVID, we kind of had a lull, and after COVID, and we came with a lot of anxiety and depression, and our numbers have increased. So we've seen an increase with children, adults, and psychiatric services in Lincoln County. So just so you know that we have teams here working with people, and we're very happy to do that and to serve you. As you saw in the letter that we sent out, 53% of the people we serve make less than $20,000. So our funding actually provides all services free to the clients that we serve. So we have a very important role in making sure that people can get mental health and CD and DD services in this county. And also a little update on our mobile crisis team. You know, that started a number of years ago where we go out on suicide calls. During COVID, that kind of slowed down a little bit, but we are back in full force and are happy to do that. So it's a great service. We partner with the police and sheriff's department to provide de-escalation and to go into homes so that people don't get arrested, sent to the hospital, and they're allowed to stay in their own home and get services. So that's our update. We're doing well. The agency is busy. So, any questions for me?
Anybody have any questions?
No.
And maybe I didn't catch it at the beginning, but how many Lincoln County residents did you serve last year?
We served 254, I believe. Yeah.
What do you see in terms of the trends with regard to delivery of either these crisis or mental health services? I mean, what are you seeing in terms of what's being presented by people that are facing these crises?
So, you mean seeing as an increase probably, or just the type of crisis? All of the above?
Both.
Okay, so we have started a co-responder because we're seeing an increase of crisis, whether it's for jobs, if it's for family issues, because it is mental health issues and they're in crisis, so, or it is drug and alcohol issues. So we are seeing an increase in our calling out to help people in crisis. We started about 6 months ago a co-responder unit that we have a social worker and a police officer go out into Minnehaha County. It's just a pilot, but we are taking 911 calls that are not violent, that we can go out and de-escalate, leaving the police officers to do their work on other issues. Right now, with that project, we've had 50% positive return on that, by meaning we're getting people into services and they're no longer calling 911. So we're trying to get ahead of, if we could ever get ahead of the crisis calls, and at least respond quickly, and so that people are not left to fight mental illness and drug addiction by themselves.
Is that pilot project in Sioux Falls? or
Yeah,
Is any of that going on in Lincoln County?
Not at this time.
Okay.
We're just piloting, and if it's successful, you'll be hearing from us. How's that? Because it has paid off right now in Minnehaha.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Any other questions? No? Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Chris.
Yes.
All right, move on to item 2 on our agenda.
That's fine. There is a local assistance and tribal consistency funds available from the Treasurer Department. Lincoln County would be eligible for 100,000 with an allocation of 50,000 right away and then 50,000 again next year. So I'm just looking for authorization to go ahead and apply for the funds.
All right, heard the request. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. All right. We'll move on to our tabled item from last week. That was the public input policy. There's a state law. It's SDCL 125-1. I think it's been on the books since 1965 that the commission provides opportunity for public comment. Us ourselves, we've had a public comment policy very similar to the new one we're looking at today, which actually is more expansive than the current one. And I think the one that we have now has been in place, well, it was before this board was sitting, at least this last term. So I don't know, Bill, do you know when the current public policy was put in place?
I believe it's been a decade or so at least.
Okay, all right. So the new one is, we're looking at, and the reason that I guess I was looking at it was to actually expand opportunity for the public to make comment. We'll be taking comment on regular agenda items. And then we're also allowing for more speakers on one topic. It is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. And I guess in moving the public comment to the end of the meetings is not, it's more of a consideration for the people that have, called the commission, asked to be put on the agenda and want to present something formally on the agenda. So I don't want to say we're giving priority, but the public will be able to speak on those items. So it may reduce actually the need for the public comment if people are able to come in and speak on a particular agenda item. So it's not intended to, quiet anyone by any means. It's actually more expansive. Bill, do you want to maybe talk about some of those changes that we made?
Yes, basically what happened was we took the old policy and we put the bulk of it as far as what people can speak on and what topics are available in open comment. The ones that went to all of the public comment are now at the front. Before it was just the policy was just for open comment on things not on the agenda. So that was just moved to the front, and for the most part, that's all stayed the same. There was some input by email and in person at the last meeting, and so we were suggesting a change to number 9, which is instead of no video presentations, to approval prior to that. One of our concerns is if somebody comes up and plays something with copyright or something that violates one of the others, we would like some notice so we could have a discussion with the parties and get approval from the commission before those things are played. So we changed it from no videos to prior approval.
Sure, and one of the things, I guess, when I was thinking about the video presentations was, even, like, I'm an attorney, and when I go to court, I have to, if I'm gonna use a flash drive or something in court, I have to have that vetted through their IT department in advance, because they don't wanna plug something in and it has some kind of virus in it that gets in the whole system, whether intended or not. So that's another reason for the prior approval being needed for video presentations, like, at least in my view. But yeah, the changes in my mind are minimal. I did get some comment from Betty Otten, and most of those things I think we've remedied in this revised version from what we had last week, with the exception of moving the public comment to the end. But that takes into consideration, obviously, people will be able to speak on regular agenda items, and they're not at this point, so.
And we were suggesting that if you're going to move it to the end, that it be before executive session. So that way, at the end of regular business, it's available.
Right, we don't want anybody sitting around here, for an hour if we're in executive session and having to wait until we come out. So it will be before executive session items that are not on our regular agenda. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Any of the commissioners have any comments or questions or?
Mr. Golden, I have a question for you about point number 9.
Okay.
I have some concerns that, on the surface, it looks like prior restraint. As you know, the government is not allowed to tell people ahead of time what it can or cannot say. And in number 9, it says you have to seek prior approval from the chairperson, but it doesn't flush out and it doesn't provide any subpoints regarding the policy as to what constitutes what approval will look like. I mean, for example, there's nothing that says it's only because of the flash drive issue, which I think that part is legitimate, but it also appears on the surface that it could discriminate on the basis of speech itself. I mean, for example, if I submit to you a video of drone footage because I flew a drone over a field like Dave Gillespie did, and he showed it to this commission because he wanted to show us what the fields look like with regard to zoning issue, maybe that would be approved. Maybe. That's the whole thing. We don't know. But then maybe somebody else would come in here the next week with something that's politically sensitive or not very appetizing to whoever the chair may be at that time, and it may get disapproved. And from a prior restraint point of view in the First Amendment, I have concerns that the policy, there is no policy. And so it's totally up to the discretion of the chair, which means that we open the county up to a First Amendment prior restraint challenge because there's nothing in this policy that flushes out what video can be shown and what can't be shown. And when it comes to First Amendment lawsuits, we have fee shifting in federal court, which means that if the petitioner is successful in challenging the county taxpayers or our insurance plan would bear all the cost of that litigation. And First Amendment litigation can be substantial in terms of the resources required. And so I understand it from the IT point of view, but the policy is silent as to that issue. So I'm just wondering if that was the direction we're going to go. I don't know if I like that direction or not, but if we're going to go in that direction, shouldn't we have it specified in there in order to avoid a prior restraint challenge?
We could certainly add language, something that the videos may not need prior approval to conform with the rest of the policy, because the rest of the policy, because we're in that time, place, matter for First Amendment, which is what speech you can or can't have, which in this context, it's regulated by the policy anyways, because there are already certain things set forth in, like, coming up and campaigning from in comment is prohibited here. Subject matters that are part of litigation, we ask not to do. So we already have limitations set forth in here and what the public can do. There's also decorum placements, which we have in many aspects. As attorneys, we all know we can walk into court, we get to argue our case, but there are boundaries and limits that we're not allowed to exceed or go past. The statute allows for the commission to go ahead and control and regulate the speech from here so that it's appropriate, it stays on topic, so that it's not personal attacks or offensive because of the form that we're actually in. So we could go back and add some language that the videos need to be checked to make sure that they're technically appropriate. We could have some language about the fact that the videos are all going to conform with the rest of the policies and procedures prior to, in order to have approval. We could add that language to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, do you have any specific language that you would suggest, Commissioner Aaron's?
Well, not right now this minute, but I think we could work on that. But my view, that's a deficiency I see in number 9. My personal point of view with regard to the video presentations is I don't want that language because I don't believe that video presentation should be prohibited. So my comments are merely aimed at providing other members of the commission opportunity to evaluate number 9 in and of itself. I don't personally agree with number 9, but if you were to adopt number 9, that is a consideration I want them to take into, to look at. I think we should allow, I think more speech is better, but, so no, I don't have specific language this minute, but I'm willing to help on it if that's the direction the board is going.
What if we, kind of spitballing it here, but what if we said that copyrighted video presentations would not be allowed without prior approval of whoever, I don't know, whoever the copyright owner is? And then they need to go through a tech review prior.
Yeah, I think the tech review is good. You don't want somebody putting in thumb drives into the computers with viruses. I think everybody gets that part.
Right.
With regard to the copyright piece, I think the language you want to use is, it's the fair use doctrine. Copyright materials are allowed to be aired. You just have to do it pursuant to the fair use doctrine. You're allowed to play portions of copyrighted material. So we got to be very careful here. We don't want to lead the public to believe that there's an outright ban on airing copyrighted materials. But the other issue is, and this is something I'd have to look into, I don't know if there's a ban on playing copyrighted materials in a government forum. And so that may not actually be a legitimate concern. I don't know if the law actually prohibits that. I do know that when you are a blogger, I represented a blogger in a First Amendment court case in front of Judge Foley, in which he determined that this blogger had all the same rights as a newspaper journalist. And what he decided is that there were some discussions about fair use doctrine. Well, anyway, bloggers are allowed to use copyrighted material on their blogs as long as they give certain attributions and only place certain amounts. I don't think those same rules apply to a government forum.
Why don't we do this so we can get what the real intent was to let, people speak on regular agenda items and stuff. And this wasn't in our last public comment policy. So would the board consider approving, taking out item 9 until we can look at that further and maybe come up with some language that does work and makes sense? Thoughts? Yeah, go ahead.
Then there would be no video until we come up with a policy that is appropriate.
It just wouldn't be in the policy, so if folks had something, I guess that's, when it's getting put on the agenda, we'd have to make that decision at that time.
I think we're at risk of not having something addressed. I would say that it'd be appropriate in lieu that we're trying to find the appropriate language, simply say at this time, not have it, because someone could say, okay, you don't have it in your policy, I want this thumb drive shown, and we wouldn't have it in our policy to say no.
I think that's how the other counties and those, I think City of Sioux Falls did it, is that they're just prohibited flat out. Which I was trying to, I guess, we were trying to finesse it, so we weren't saying they were completely prohibited.
If I can make the suggestion, if you take it out, we could bring it back with language later on. Because as it stands now, if something doesn't conform with the policy and it's on video, it still would be the chairman's ability under one of these other sections to address it. It doesn't happen very often. So we were trying to, clarification on the point might not be a bad thing. We could go ahead and put together some criteria, outline it, bring it back at a later point if you want to do that.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
if I understand Commissioner Poppins, you would say we would not have video presentations until we have vetted this thing entirely and come up with one that may be acceptable to all commissioners, correct?
Well, I think it's appropriate for the safety of the county, so, absolutely.
I'm in favor, Commissioner Poppins, of not having any videos, period. However, that's my own personal opinion, but to move this agenda forward, I would say that we would prohibit videos from being part of public comment until we have had a time to evaluate and perhaps come up with a policy that can be more amenable to ourselves.
I think that would be appropriate this time, given that there's some uncertainty as to what the language should be on that. If I may, Madam Chair, to address the public input, and I applaud you for bringing forth this, opening up even more discussion from the public. The advantages of putting the public comment to the end is a lot of the things may be addressed already through each item that is on the agenda, so that it may or may not answer somebody's questions ahead of having to speak. One thing that I would ask for consideration is so that the public knows if they are nothing on the agenda, but they simply want to speak on an unrelated topic, that we place it that it will never be before a certain time, whether it be 9:30 or 10 o'clock, so that they will have reassurance that they're not going to come to a meeting and the meeting's over. So that they wouldn't have to sit there for an hour or hour and a half or whatever that predetermined time could be. They could simply come at a later time in the meeting for public comment and be reassured they didn't have to sit through an extra hour, 2 hours, or whatever that meeting is. So if they didn't feel that was appropriate, so.
Commissioner Gibbon, anything you want to add?
I guess my question is, item number 4, we're currently at 5 minutes, now we're reducing it to 3 minutes. Would a compromise be 4 minutes? I'm just saying, I'm not sure if we're all on board with
I think what
3
we did,
minutes.
right, I think what we did was, reduced that, knowing that we were gonna be giving people an opportunity to speak on each agenda item that they wanted to. So I don't know what thoughts, I think that's what,
Whatever number
yeah,
the
I'm
commission
not,
decides we want to set. If
I'm
we
not
want a
stuck
5
with that
minutes, it's
number
5.
by
If
any
it's 3
means.
minutes.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if
Go
I
ahead.
may. I had the opportunity to serve as chairman when a topic of wind turbine generation was in front of us. It was a very heated debate, a lot of public input. I will indicate that at my discretion, a chair at that time placed at a 3-minute time limit. I did not get any complaints at that point in time, as long as everyone knew, what the time limit was. We went through, I can't even tell you how many people had an opportunity, because it's also meant to protect other people's rights and expectations of how long they're going to sit in a meeting. It was very efficient. I don't oppose 5, I don't oppose 4. It could be 30 if the public, everyone wants to sit through it. I just felt at that time, and I thought it was efficient, and it did work through quite well at that time. Thank you.
I know there's been many times where people have been allotted a certain amount of time and they've been able to continue and not be cut off. I'm not stuck on 3 minutes. Thoughts, Commissioner Aaron's, what do you think?
Well, I go back to my comments from last week. I'd be willing to compromise on the 3 minutes if the public were allowed, excuse me. I have no problem compromising on the 3 minutes or even moving it down to 2 minutes if the public were allowed to comment on each agenda item as it came up.
And they are going to be,
No,
right?
no, as I understand it, the policy, you'll be able to speak on current agenda items at the end of each meeting, correct?
No, that's not correct.
Okay, so as
At the
I
time.
understand, because I'm reading through this here, and what caught me was the comment about the commission shall hear public comment at the end of each regular meeting and prior to the executive session. Now, so I'm seeing that, and it means that the public open forum piece happens at the end, but before executive session, right?
The intention is for public hearings, comment is a time of the public hearings that we have to do by statute. On the agenda items themselves, they'll be addressing the agenda items at the time the commission is taking them up. So treat it like we would a public hearing where they can come up and speak for 3 minutes on the specific topic prior to a vote of the commission.
Right, so for instance, like number 3, it says the comments will relate only to the agenda item under consideration. So it's intended for the people to be able to speak during that agenda item.
Yeah, and my apologies, that just didn't come across as being very
Okay.
clear to me, I guess. And so I have no problem with the time limit, so long as people are allowed to address, and I call it the Texas version, the model that we talked about last week, where people are allowed to come up just like they would at a public hearing. Say, for example, today, Southeastern Behavioral Annual Report by Chris Graham. So just so I'm clear, Chris would be able to come up, she'd be able to make her presentation, and then if we enact this policy, and this is what I want to make clear here, people would be able to come in and speak to that agenda item. So for example, in an idyllic situation, maybe there's others who are very passionate about mental health concerns or had an experience. They could all come in and speak to that issue. I'm okay with the 3 minutes when you have the ability to speak to that agenda item at the time. Because I think what that's going to do is it's going to reduce the amount of time that people want to speak. Like, for example, today, at the beginning of today's meeting, I think we had, 4 or 5 speakers, and it took about 15 minutes. I think you're going to start to see that number go down. It's going to get compressed if you allow people to speak to the individual agenda items. So I support that part. The bulletin board, what I call the bulletin board speech, which happens at the very beginning with the opportunity for public comment, I think we could compress that portion down. Let's not do the 30 and let's do 20 or less minutes and keep it up front in case there was somebody who wants to come and make their bulletin board advertisement to say, hey, the Lutheran Church is doing their chili supper on Friday night at 6:30. Let them come in right away at the beginning of the meeting, say their piece and get out of here. But let's shorten that time because we've now increased the ability of people to speak to the agenda items. And then that way, that sends a signal to the public that we're prioritizing them over ourselves. And it says, we care about you, you get to come in, we're putting your needs ahead of ours. And also, it kind of holds the commissioners captive because we have to sit here the whole time to do the public's business, which I've got no problem doing. But it prevents commissioners from slipping out at the end from hearing the public comment because they got to stay here to take the votes. So let's let's keep it on the front end, but let's make the allotted time smaller, and then it keeps the meeting going. That would be my compromise comments.
Thoughts, commissioners?
I think the concern of shortening that time, because I would prefer it being at the end and not have any constraints as to how long they have to address topics that they think are important, but have not or are not scheduled to be on our agenda. So that's the advantage of keeping it at the end. But yet, I still support having a finite time that it cannot be before, so public can know, be reassured that they don't, might not miss that opportunity. So, thank you.
Commissioner Gibbon, any thoughts on that?
I guess I understand both Commissioner Poppins and Aaron's thoughts on it, and I think either way is acceptable. I guess I think maybe Commissioner Aaron's probably cleared it up better in saying that at least there would be comment at each additional item as we go along and so on and so forth. So I probably would support that.
So what do we want to do? This got tabled last time. I've had no emails, no phone calls, no questions from anybody on this board about what it says. So what do you guys want to do?
Madam Chair, if you would accept an amendments or changes, removing the, issue about video out of it, I would ask then the only caveat B is that we include that no public hearing, or the public hearing will not be ever before 10 a.m. on a scheduled meeting. Is that all right? Bill gave me a look.
Well, then, yeah, then I don't think that works either.
9 or 9:30, because sometimes you have short meetings.
Okay, I
So if
want to
we-
make sure, so 9:30, I would offer that 9:30.
Okay, so,
I think that's fair.
I would offer that as a motion.
okay, so there's a set time that there would be.
It would not be.
Public comment would not occur before that time, so somebody would have the opportunity to know when it's going to be.
So they would
Is that-
save an hour at a minimum of their day.
Madam Chair, I'll second the motion and call the question.
All right. Got a motion and a second. Are we clear on what the motion is?
No,
So my.
partially.
So
Little
here's my,
fuzzy.
here's my understanding of the scribblings I have, is that it's going to say the same for the time period, for the 3 minutes. The maximum time is 3 minutes, that there will be a change that public comment, which is not on the agenda, will not occur before 9:30. So that would be meaning that our commission meetings are not going to end before 9:30 so that the public may comment. We're getting rid of number 9, so there is no video, or there's no,
Okay, I'm going to go check into my video conference and I'll be back.
there'll be no conversation about video at this time. And all of the other terms and conditions, as far as there will now be comment on the agenda items as they come up, and the public comment will be at the end of the meeting prior to executive session. That is my understanding of the changes and what's currently presented.
Prior to the executive sessions that are not on the agenda?
Yes.
Correct. Okay. Commissioner Schmidt, did you leave us? If you did.
No, I did not.
Okay. Does that clarify the first and the motion and the second on that?
He's, Mr. Golden, I think, has clearly stated my intent of my motion.
All right. Commissioner Schmidt, is that your second?
Yes.
All right. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
My discussion, or my points would be this, now, just leave it at this. Framing the ability for the public to come in and provide us with their comments is important. It's perhaps probably the most important thing we can do. In the interest of being able to get what I think is the major priority from my point of view, as well as those people I represent and have talked to about this. Even though I don't like moving the public comment to the back end of the meeting, I would support the policy as you wrote, and I don't like number 9, I already talked about that. But I would support the public policy as you wrote it, because I think what it does is it moves us closer towards people being able to speak on current agenda items at the time they're being considered. You can't get everything you want in government. You got to make some compromises. I consider myself a First Amendment absolutist. But the thing is, I'm not going to support this issue of, times and deadlines on the videos and all that. I get where you're coming from. I get where Commissioner Poppins is coming from. I understand it. I don't agree with it. I think it becomes more convoluted and complicated that way. But I would support the policy as written by the chair, because I like that part about people being able to speak on each agenda item at the time they're happening. So I'm not going to support the amendment. I'm going to vote against that, but I would vote to support the policy as proposed for the stated reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gibbon, any final thoughts, comments?
I think they've been well directed by both Commissioner Poppins and Commissioner Aaron's.
Right. I mean, I agree with what Commissioner Aaron's is saying. Obviously, I wrote this revision. But I'm going to support the motion because I think it does further what we actually were trying to accomplish in making this our meetings more available to the public. So Sean, with that, will you call the roll?
Okay, Madam Chair, let's clarify. Are we voting on the amendment or are we voting on the motion?
We're voting on the amendment right
All
now.
right, thank you.
Sean, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's,
No.
Commissioner Gibbon,
No.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
No. Is there a replacement motion?
Madam Chair, I'll move to pass the policy as written by you, but taking out number 9, and specifically stating that there will be more conversations about flushing out our video presentation policy.
Commissioner, how do you feel about the no public comment will be heard before 9:30?
That was defeated in that motion.
Well, there was a lot more to that motion than that.
I think that was the only thing that he's discussing between now. Madam Chair, let me interrupt, sorry.
No, the way I understood Commissioner Poppins's motion was just what he said. is
Okay.
that, he wanted to give the public time to say, or time to plan, that public input wouldn't happen until after 9:30 every morning. I mean, the reason I oppose it is because I oppose putting, I think it gets convoluted to people. Because then from now on, we got to say, don't come in here till 9:30, people, if you want to say something. I just think I don't know, nuance is very difficult in politics, it's very difficult in government. I just want to have things be very straightforward, and I'm supporting the policy you wrote, even though I don't like the part about moving the public comment to the back end. I like the fact that you included in there public hearing style comment where people get to speak towards each agenda item. So that's why I'm supporting it. And that's why I'm making the motion.
All right, minus number 9 on the video.
I'll second it, Madam Chair, if I may
Yep,
comment.
go ahead.
Absolutely. The only difference is I wanted to provide a reassurance to the public if they chose to not come and listen to items that they had no interest in. But if the board wishes not to support that, I absolutely don't. I'm not going to stand in the way because I do think this is a betterment for the public to have input into our county and what's going on. So, thank you.
Thank you. I've got a motion and a second. Sean, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's,
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Motion carries. Thanks, everybody. All right, discussion and board action regarding confidentiality policy.
The reason that came up is that in Los Angeles, there was a helicopter crash with Kobe Bryant. One of the detectives took a picture at the scene of body parts and then published those. And so Los Angeles wound up writing a check for $14 million after the lawsuit. I am aware of issues in the state of South Dakota where people have taken confidential information and released them in other counties. Between law enforcement, our office, the treasurer's office, the auditor's office, we all have either financial, medical, or other information that is quite private. And so the suggestion is that in the hiring packet for employees, this is included to put them on notice that we do handle confidential information. That if we see somebody's medical records come through on a county poor relief lien, that those are something that we're not supposed to discuss as employees. If we have access to people's financial records because they come in for different reasons in different offices, that information is to remain confidential. Those are the type of issues that it's intended to address, and just remind people that when you're given access to certain information that is not public, never intended to be public, and is highly confidential, and people have to hand it over in order to go through either a process in our office with sheriff's office. The auditor's office, we all see the county mental health records that come through on individuals. These are all things that are not supposed to be published, or they're not supposed to be talked about outside the office. So we intend this as a reminder for the entire county. Our office, state's attorney has already implemented a different version of this to remind everybody in the office that we have not just confidential information in the office for the attorneys, but the staff as well. And so that's the intention of this. And so we would like you to adopt it as a county policy, that this is included and all the employees are made aware that they do have these obligations to, when people entrust us with private information, not provide it to others, family members, friends. They shouldn't be talking about it across departments. So that's the intention.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Bill?
Madam Chair, I don't have any questions, but I do have a couple comments, and I can wait till there's a motion on the floor.
All right, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve this.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Discussion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Mr. Golden is right, but I think there's something else that needs to go along with this policy, and that's training. We can sign all the pieces of paper we want to, but unless our employees are specifically not only trained on how the policy works, but on the ramifications and the importance of the policy, we're not closing the door completely unless we provide the training. And that's the biggest issue, I think, is, you can have somebody sign this piece of paper, but then 6, 18, 24 months later, to use the law enforcement analogy, they start sharing pictures. Now, the reason I think the law enforcement analogy is apt is because 2 years ago, I was appointed as an investigator by the Army to look into a member of the Army Reserve who was a law enforcement officer who shared some pictures. And I'm not giving away anything in confidence here, because this story was all over the internet. And I was the person appointed to be the investigator as to what ramifications the officer would face as a result of his conduct. And he was sharing pictures, indecent pictures of a person that he had pulled over, and he sent them to his own phone, and he was sharing them. And it was totally inappropriate, and it was totally wrong. And it was in his capacity as a sworn law enforcement officer, but also it reflects bad on the Army Reserve. Anyway, I've got some firsthand experience with it. And I'll tell you what, the biggest thing I learned is not the fact that you don't have a policy. It's about the training. You know, you need to have annual and/or semi-annual training reinforcing the need and the importance of the confidentiality. And especially when it comes to law enforcement. They come into contact with a lot of these things. But also, for example, the treasurer's office. I don't want my credit card number given out to people after I pay for my car renewal. And I'm not saying they're doing that, and I understand why you brought this forth because of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department issue. And I think it is important. It sends a message to the people of the county, though, that we're taking it seriously and we're not going to let this stuff happen and there's consequences for it.
Thank you. I've got a motion and a second. Sean, we call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's.
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon.
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes. Sorry, I had it on mute.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Move on to item 5 on our agenda. You're gonna handle that, Bill?
Yes. We had entered into negotiations for a manager at the T airport. And we had initially sent over a contract that was then edited by the counsel for the individual and sent back. It was clearly a counteroffer to what initially had been sent. Most of what we had sent in the contract had been deleted or substantially changed. At this point in time, I would recommend that you deny the acceptance of the counterproposal at this point. I do not think that based on the response and the information that we received back, that it meets the county's needs.
Thank you. I've heard the request. Are there
I'll
any
offer that
questions?
motion.
Okay, go ahead. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, and the motion is to deny the contract?
Yes.
All right. Any further discussion? If not, Sean, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's.
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon.
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt. Commissioner Landine.
Yes. Motion carries. Move on to the next agenda item.
Sorry,
Go ahead,
Madam
Bill.
Chair. Yes.
Thank you for that.
It's hard. Just flipping back and forth from mute to unmute is, never mind.
Go ahead, Bill.
This is placed on the agenda for discussion, possible board action concerning hiring a county manager for the airport. That would be a position that would be handling ground maintenance, basic facility management as far as ensuring that the hangars are meeting FAA requirements that we need to do, ensuring that the runway doesn't have any objects on it. Some other duties and stuff that we're still fleshing out as far as that. There's some other negotiations, I believe, going on out at the airport, but basically the basic ground maintenance and ensuring that all of the FAA rules and stuff are being met out there would be the responsibility for this airport manager. And this is intended to be a position within the county.
Okay, so, and then would this be advertised? Is
We
that
can
what you're
certainly-
is that what you're asking for, or?
Well, this would be a new position.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Bill?
Well, I'm wondering what I can ask and can't ask, given
Okay.
some previous executive sessions.
Maybe I can help you.
Okay.
The intention is that there may be individuals already within the county that could assume this role. There's been some discussions about that. This could be something that if the board decided to advertise and go outside, you could do that as well. you would need to make a decision on what department, if any, this falls under. It may be a new department head if you choose to do that. These are all policy issues for the commission to make a decision on how you'd like to handle this position.
So I know Commissioner Poppins has taken the lead on this. And from the discussions we've had, they've been very good, I think. Just to the way that this has been presented today, I don't support creating a new FTE. What I would support is reassigning an individual who already works for the county to take on the duties of having the airport manager job, and then do an internal reorganization as opposed to creating a new FTE.
If
Do
I
we-
may.
Well, I'm just wondering if we have somebody in the county that has the right qualifications, so that's the only reason I'm
Madam Chair.
questioning it.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I think what is appropriate at this time, that it will become a new FTE, does not mean that we won't fill it from a different, but it is a new position. So my motion would be create this position and then take steps to fill that position appropriately. Hopefully, in the near future, we'll have a new, we can fire our current HR department and have a department that will help us fill this position. It may be internal, it may not be internal, but I think the appropriate is to create the position and then take steps appropriately to fill that position. It does not hold us either way at this point, just the only thing is the position will be, which will be a new FTE, but we may choose to fill it from within. So that's my motion, is actually create the position and to take steps to fill that position appropriately.
So, what salary does the position start out at? What grade?
Undetermined at this time. Again, it's just a position. We have hopefully an HR that will be coming, that will help us define all of those. But I think this, hi, Madam Auditor.
So would this position be paid under the airport as a
I would, I would believe that would be part under the airport budget. So that would be, again, a detail to get defined. But I think this is simply the step that this announces to the public. We are creating this position, and we're going to take steps to fill that position appropriately.
So for clarification, you're really going to authorize the HR department to come up with a job description, flesh
Define
it
it.
out, and bring it back to the commission.
Yes.
But it does not create authorization for an FTE. Commissioner I guess that's a question for Commissioner Poppins that I have.
It would be a new FTE, but again, it may not be filled from outside. It's a new position, which is a new FTE. Madam Auditor, if I'm wrong, correct me, but it will be a different title for a position than we currently have. So in essence, it has to be a new FTE. I'm not HR, but I sure think that would be the appropriate.
Just for clarification, can you authorize us to bring you back the job description at this point in time? So we can show it to you with the salary range and the position, and we'll bring it back to you, and then we'll resolve these other things down the road.
That's what I'd
Yep.
like to see.
And that's, none of that is clear, just so the public understands this is the way we're moving to. And all of the detail, a lot of the details have to be defined yet, including clarity of if it is a new FTE or not. I believe it would be a new FTE, but it could clearly be filled from within if we choose to do so. None of that being tied, but hopefully we have an HR shortly that will help us get through all of that, so. Or we could table it. I'm not opposed to that, but I think it does make an announcement to the public, which is important.
I guess I'd just like to see a job description.
Commissioner Poppins, or Madam Chair, can I offer you a compromise right now to move this forward?
Sure.
I'll vote no if it's for an FTE. However, we move the ball forward, I think, by drawing up the job description, attaching a position and grade to it, the salary, all those things. We define what department that person works to. They'd be a department head, so they report to this commission. We define all that. I'll vote to support all that. And then maybe we have some discussions internally. I won't vote to approve a new FTE today, though. So that's where I'm at, Commissioner Poppins.
Yeah, I respect that. It may be, like I said, I'm not HR. I believe it's going to be in essence, because it will be a new position, still classified as a new FTE. That FTE may be eliminated somewhere else to compensate for it. My intent at this point is to make sure that the public has been announced and understands that we are moving toward this direction. So any action today or no action, even a tabling, I think takes that into effect. So thank you.
All right, so the motion is to create a job description.
I will change my motion to create a job description for a manager duties will be to, for the Lincoln County Municipal Airport.
All right, so I
Not
have that
municipal,
amended
scratch
motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. We call the roll, Sean.
Commissioner Aaron's.
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon.
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. All right, item 7 on our agenda. And that is an executive session, so I need a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we go into executive session under SDCL 1-25-2, sub 1 and sub 3.
All right, and so, each agenda item, Bill, we're gonna go in on item 7, 8, and 9 on our agenda, so we don't come back out for each one? Yes. All right. I've got a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you. Sean, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's.
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon.
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. And we may be taking action on any of these items afterwards, so just so the public knows, and, yeah. So we're in executive session. Thank you. Sean, may call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's? Yes. Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt, are you on the phone? Commissioner Landine?
Yes. All right, so we went into executive session on items 7, 8, and 9 on the agenda. Any commissioners, or is there any action to be taken on item 7? No? Okay, how about number 8? Sending a letter.
Madam Chair, I move that the letter be sent.
All right. All right, is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any discussion? If not, Sean, may you call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt? Commissioner Landine?
Yes. And then action on number 9?
Madam Chair, I move that we authorize State's Attorney's Office to make the offer to the applicant.
You need anything more than that? Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Any discussion? If not, Sean, may you call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt? Commissioner Landine?
Yes. Motion carries. All right, and then I just need, there are no other executive session items, correct, Bill?
No, there are not.
Okay, then I just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Sean, we call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbon?
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt? Commissioner Landine?
Yes, and just want to remind everybody about an informal meeting tonight at the Lincoln County 4-H grounds starting at 6 p.m. to talk about courthouse expansion and the options that are available to us right now. Thanks, everybody.